Yes, I think that we are now. We're live. We're live in the YouTube. Great. Okay. Good afternoon from Brazil. Greetings from Brazil. We are now. It is 2 p.m. in Brazil. Today we have a very special guest. It is Veerash. She said to me that I should call her Veerash. She's a lawyer, she's a mediator, she's a founder of a fair practice. Perfect, very good. She's a mediator for a long time. And today she's going to share with us her experience. How does she feel? How does she see mediation? And for us is really a pleasure. Thank you very much, Dr. Viraj, for being here with us. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. Thank you for having me on your stream. And I appreciate this opportunity to talk about mediation. It is my passion, it is the profession I'm now following. And I think I've made it my way of life, actually.
So it's good. So now we are going to start our. If you are here, wherever you are around the world, you can ask, you can make some intervention. We are here to talk without any academics way. We're going to have a chat to know about how you mediate. So I'm going to start right now with this after our this one. So we are back. Doctor, I want to say Dr. Virash. Please, mediator Virash. By the way, where are you from? We're talking right now.
I'm based right now in Johannesburg, South Africa. This is where I'm broadcasting from today.
Perfect. So we are from Brazil. We are the northeastern from Brazil. We live here in the northeastern of Brazil, near the beach. Now we are 300 kilometers, not 300, about I'll say 300 meters from the beach. We are today here is very hot, very hot. 32 degrees and sensation 37, 38. And about you in your country?
It's the same. It feels like we're closer to the sun than everyone else on Earth right now. Usually 5 p.m. It's 35 degrees, but right now it's 7 p.m. here, and we're still experiencing 33 degrees. So it's not even cooling down.
So
Um, so we're all hot and
we
bothered.
are the same.
We're
Yes.
coping with the summer.
Yeah. Yeah. Viraj, for me, it's a pleasure. It's a really great pleasure to interview you, to have you here, and it's not only a pleasure; it's also a great honor for us to have you here. And I would like to start with a question that for me is very precious. Why have you decided to be a mediator? Why? For me, sometimes I'm very curious about that. Why have you decided to be a mediator?
I knew you were going to ask me this because you did give me this heads up saying, I'm just going to ask you questions about what it's like being a mediator, practicing as a mediator. And every time I'm training in mediation, I'm meeting young lawyers or even people who have decided to jump into the professional path of becoming a mediator. And they do ask me, well, why did you decide from going from an adversarial approach where you were part of a justice system that picked a side to suddenly dedicating your entire practice? My entire organization, Fair Practice, only works with mediation and negotiation. And it actually was a calling because I was at court one day and I saw the devastation an adversarial system causes on unrepresented people, people who are not familiar with the court system, people who have no resources to speak up for themselves or to even stand up in court because they just feel ashamed. They don't know what court courtesies are, what court processes are. So I watched people standing on the steps of the court not knowing what to do and crying because they know, because I can't speak up, I'm going to lose. Nobody's going to hear my side of the story. And it was 2004 when I saw this happen. I It stayed with me in 2006. After I had my child, I decided I'm going to change the way things are, in the way I practice, because I started off watching families fall apart. And there was the reason, one of the reasons were that people were unsure what it was they could ask for when they were getting divorced or separated, because a lawyer would do it for them. And it seemed like there was a generic approach that certain people had certain resources and power imbalances existed within the court system. So I decided to look in 2006, what are other options of getting people into an environment where they can speak up? And mediation fell into my lap. And at that point in 2006, I just went down that rabbit hole of understanding what mediation is, just filling my cart up with all sorts of mediation training. I just started from one end, and I still am attending training courses. Not that I'm saying that I'm not accomplished enough to mediate. It's just everyone, and even Jean, once we start learning about mediation, we never stop, because the
Yeah.
skills of a mediator, we're just enhancing. And it doesn't just stop in your basic foundational training. It doesn't stop in that basic 5-day or 40 hours or 6-day or 10-day training. It goes beyond that, because we're working with human beings, and human beings are complex people. So when
Yes.
we're putting them into an environment where we're asking them to speak up for themselves, we've got to understand what is it that they're actually saying that needs to be heard and addressed. So I decided to focus my practice on giving people that space to speak and to be heard, and to understand why they're sitting in this situation, in under these circumstances that they feel are just being, they're sitting in an unfair situation, or it's a challenging situation, and they can't seem to find a solution to part ways amicably with someone, or to get on with their lives. So I've dedicated my practice to sitting with people to understand the why you are here and what it is you want to get out from this dispute, or this conflict, or under these circumstances. I know it's a
It's
long answer.
perfect.
It's a
No,
long journey to becoming a
no,
mediator.
no, it's perfect. Well, I agree with you totally when you say we cannot stop. The human being is very complex, and when you say 2 points that for me is very important is when people they have the space to speak, when they have the chance to be heard, to be listened to. I think that's very important. And sometimes I would say a little bit worried when I see some mediators try to speak to the parties the solution of the case. We have to understand that the parties are responsible to find a solution. We cannot interfere. I believe that mediator can help them trying to make them to understand the real meaning of the conflict. Perfect. I have a question here from Professor Catarina Monteiro. She's also mediator. She works with me in our office, and she's really a perfect mediator. She works with human rights. She's a master in human rights professor too. And she asks you, what do you need to be a mediator in your country? What's necessary?
In South Africa, we started off with a pilot project, court annex mediation project, and
Yes.
it described the training as being a minimum of 40 hours. Thank you for the question, Katrina, before I forget to say that. And it starts with a minimum of 40 hours of training, which is 5 days, 8 hours per day, or however it is divided up into. Our court rules, though, state that for a person to be considered a mediator, they need to be independent and impartial. Now, how that is interpreted in our country is open up for various people deciding that they are a mediator, because they decide they themselves are independent and impartial. However, we know since the court annex mediation project, which is on hold right now, is that at least have 40 hours of foundational training in mediation, which is what we currently do as trainers in mediation. The foundational 40 hours, it could either be online training or in-person training, or a hybrid of online and in-person. And once you have that basic understanding and basic training, our Children's Act refer to that person as a suitably qualified mediator. Now, again, it's open for interpretation. What is suitably qualified? So there isn't any regulatory body in our country right now that decides who is a mediator and who isn't. We are hoping we get to a point where we can reach a middle ground in determining who is a mediator. And you don't need to have a professional qualification or a bachelor's degree. Anyone over the age of 18 can take on courses and become a mediator.
Great. It's the same in Brazil. In Brazil, you don't need to be a private mediator. You just need to be a person of people who trust in you, and of course, with capacity, kind of a professional capacity is very important. Because we have a court mediator that need to be a person graduated, and a private mediator that you do not need. Here today, we have the Dr. Maria José Luna. Maria José Luna, she's a professor at our Federal University. She is the coordinator of a program of post-graduation, master, and doctorate in human rights. She is perfect. She's a great mediator. Thank you very much. Moment, please. Doutora Maria José, gratidão pela sua participação. Uma grande honra para a gente e orgulho. Okay, Veerash, today we are my internet is not good at all. I don't know what's going on. My internet. I have a question for you. This is the question for you. Let me see here the question. Let me see. For example, this one. How can people use mediation? And what cases can be taken to mediation? Veerash.
The second part of your question is quite controversial here in South Africa. What cases can be taken to mediation? And I'll come back to that just now. How can people use mediation? I'm trying not to go into lecture mode, to be a lecturer and give you an answer to that, because there's a theoretical understanding that people can use mediation at any point in a dispute or in the conflict, at any point. Even after judgment is given, you can come back to mediation or go to mediation.
Even criminal?
Here we have restorative justice. So you can, yes, to work with perpetrators and the victims. And I'm talking about how can people use mediation. I'm going to talk about it now in terms of commercial mediation or civil mediation, family mediation, workplace mediation. With the restorative justice, it is a touchy subject because people have to be willing to come face to face with the perpetrator or abuser or person that they feel unsafe with. And I think what cases can be taken to mediation, here, of course, the debate is, can domestic violence, where there's allegations of domestic violence, can it be mediated? So I'm not going to, it's quite a big challenge here to understand our circumstances in terms of the people of our country are quite divided in terms of their access to justice and access to resources. So many people would believe that cases that can be mediated require voluntariness from the parties to feel safe to mediate. There are other people who would say we could use mediation in terms of domestic violence cases where we could do the shuttle approach and deal with individuals in private sessions so that they never have to engage with each other if they feel unsafe. So there is quite a debate on what cases can be mediated. At this point, to give just a generic answer, I think if parties are willing to come to terms that they are responsible for the decisions, they need to be the decision makers, they need to come and listen to each other, to be heard, to understand one-on-one, face-to-face, or even online, let's talk to each other, let's have a discussion. Can we do that? Then those cases are open for mediation. And again, there's much more and always a lengthier answer to what cases can be mediated. For me, it comes down to the parties, and I've mediated many cases where if parties feel this is not the right time, we've narrowed down the issues. Right now, we need more time to actually understand what exactly our dispute is about. And they go away and then they come back to mediation to say, now we understand what mediation is about. It means we have to sit together and navigate and negotiate our outcome.
Great. Very good. Very good. Yeah, here in Brazil, for example, here in our situation, before start, we cannot make any kind of criminal. No criminal. We have restorative justice here too, restorative, but mediation, we can't. And the main point here is that mediation is volunteer. It's volunteer. The main point. Mediator and the parts, they are volunteers. Sometimes people say, "No, I'm volunteer." When I make the open statement, I say I am volunteer too. But sometimes people say, "But you are being paid for that." So yes, but I'm volunteer. If I didn't want to be here, I wouldn't be here. I'm here because I want to be here. It's not because of money, because I want to be here. And you trust me to be a mediator. That's the main point. Good. And I have a question here of Dr. Professor Katarina. The question is, what are the stages of mediation and how does it start in your country when you make mediation?
So much like the global way of how mediators are taught to go through the opening stage, the exploring, and then bargaining, and then coming down to facilitating the negotiation, and then reaching agreement or partial agreement. The stages are quite the same in media, and I'm talking about Western mediation. So we have Western style of mediation in South Africa, and we have African style of mediation. Now, the difference is the Western style of mediation is like the format followed in a lot of training programs around the world. And the African style of mediation is quite different. It's more community-based. So there are no stages. Here we rely on the elders of communities, the tribal leaders, people who are in positions of power within the African communities to mediate. And it's not a confidential process. It's quite a public process. So everyone is invited to the mediation. They sit around, they listen in. There is a sense of power imbalance because the traditional leader or the tribal leader is someone who has a sense of power over the parties. So you have to hope that he allows or she allows everyone an equal opportunity to speak and not be bound by what the community believes is the right answer to the dispute. So in South Africa, there are the practices of African style mediation. With the Western style mediation, as it's taught, we do go through the opening statement, the opening introduction by the mediator, then exploring what the issues are in dispute, of course, developing the agenda, then going into analyzing what these issues are, the negotiation style where we're doing our BATNAs and WATNAs and reality testing, and then for getting down to bargaining and developing a realistic agreement that is fair to what the parties or what the disputants or the clients think is fair. And I always say this to people I'm training, mediators, it's not what you think is fair. It's what the parties think is fair. It's about them. Yeah. The outcome is about them. And then, of course, we come down to an agreement, and that could be a partial agreement. So they could decide on some of the issues. They can make a decision on some of the issues and capture that in agreement. And others they can take to any other dispute resolution forum, whether it's arbitration or go to court, or even come back at a later stage to negotiate. I hope that answers your question briefly, Katarina.
Yes, yeah. I have a question here. Because here we have our stage of mediation. Also, we have this old stage where the mediator introduces himself about the mediation, introduce himself, how it wants to be addressed, and they speak about the responsibilities of the mediator, the mediator also speak about the responsibility of the parts, because I think that's very important. Parts need to know their responsibilities in all the whole processes. We talk about neutrality, we talk about impartiality. The mediator is neutral and impartial. Neutral because he's not interfere. Neutral because he's not saying what's the solution. Impartial because for the mediator, doesn't matter who's right or who's wrong. He can see that. Two people, and in the mediation, we do not speak about my right, your right, my law or your law. We talk about agreement. We talk about how to find solution. Sometimes, what the most important thing, we can diverge in just one or two things. I always say that 90% of the conflict around the world comes from communication. Communication, wrong communication. And 10% is only point of view. Point of view only. 90% communication, 10% point of view. Because when you see a number 9, I see number 6. At the top of the hill, when I look down, it goes down. But if at the bottom, it goes up. So point of view, we have to respect the point of view. And the main point, the main task of a mediator is to provoke in the party the desire to see at least the point of view of the other. It's not doesn't mean no, but I do not agree. I know you do not agree. I'm not asking you to agree. I'm just telling you, see the other part. See with his or her eyes. It's very important because in the moment that my point of view is my point of view. Thomas Campbell once said it. The wisdom of a person, of the culture, the most important point of a wisdom is to understand that everybody has different points of view. It's the magic of the thing. Thank you. And other thing, for example, what question I have here is, what is the first proceeding when a person looks for you? Well, I'm going to look at the mediator Veerash to resolve my case by mediation. What this person have to do first?
So in South Africa, there are different ways of approaching a mediator. There's private mediation where someone could go onto our website or any website, or Google search mediators in Johannesburg or South Africa, and then they would choose by looking at the credentials, looking at the person's expertise, field of expertise. Is that the person for me or for us? And then they would contact us to mediate their dispute, as they would any organization. And what we allow in South Africa is choice. Again, it's voluntary. So choose the mediator you're comfortable with. And if we were contacted by a person, of course, we have to understand whether there's availability. Do they want to do this online, in person? Who do we have available to assist them? And what is important, and I think all mediators and people who are looking for mediators, is find the mediator that is an expert in the issues that are in dispute. Don't just take a random mediator who is not an expert in that field. For instance, you wouldn't go to an engineer who's a mediator to resolve a workplace dispute if that is something they're not familiar with. And I think that for us, when a person comes in, we do the intake of that person to understand, are we the right fit for them? Are they comfortable with us? And we proceed then to explain to them what mediation is. How does it matter whether you are legally represented or not? Does it make a difference? Explain what it would look like in the opening stages, where you would have to produce the issues in dispute. What then happens? Who is the mediator? And if you choose a mediator, you have to know who you're going to develop a trust relationship with. As we always talk about, the mediator has to be trusted. So we allow the person to have a 15-minute consultation just to meet the mediator, to get to understand them. Are they comfortable with them? And then they will decide by understanding what mediation is, because we do explain what it is. It's not where you come in and the mediator makes a decision for both of you. You make the decisions, and this is how the process is. It doesn't happen within an hour or within 2 hours. So it's a lot of information sharing with our clients before they decide this is the process we want to engage in, and this is what we understand the process to be.
Perfect. Perfect. Very good. Thank you. Here also in our, I know you have a foundation, aren't you? Don't you have a foundation, a CEO, a founder of an institution?
Yes, fair practice.
For practice, yes. Here we have the IBRAMAC. We are the first chamber of mediation operation in Brazil. And always we have, before starting a mediation, when somebody else looks for us, we make a kind of a pre-mediation. We call an interview, a pre-interview to talk about with the person. What is the real meaning? Why, if this person wants to resolve the dispute, or if he or she really wants to resolve the situation. Because sometimes here, my experience in Brazil, also in the United States, I've been to mediate in the United States too. They just want an excuse to say, "Oh, I tried the mediation, but I couldn't find a solution. Mediation didn't work with me." Sometimes they just need a document to show in the court, and we analyze step by step. Here you have these, what we call the pre-mediation interview, to understand it really. Because if the question is, we have a kind of admissibility document. If this happened to me, I talked to a person and said, well, unfortunately, we cannot take your case to mediation. And he said it was a man. Why not, sir? Because during our conversation, during our interval, you didn't show at least the minimum desire to resolve this dispute. What you want is to confront, to make to challenge the other person, to say what you want to say, to provoke. And here is not an arena. You need to be here with an open hand to say, well, I'm here with my open heart. I want to try to find. You are not here to find a solution, but I need to see in you the minimal sign up signal. Say, I want to solve this dispute. Sometimes it's very important. And for us, mediator is not easy at all. That's my opinion. To say a person, you do not want to mediate is hard. But that's why we need to be sincere with the person. That's my opinion as a mediator. Another question here. For example, a person wants to mediate, or Jean, we are going to looking for you. Say, Veerash, I want to mediate with Paul. We have a problem in my house. I rent a house, and he doesn't want to pay the house, and I want to call him for a mediation. We do not have a contract. Okay, we do not have a contract, but I want to solve this dispute with peace and talk to him. Okay, what do you do to call this person? How do you make it? How do you invite the requesting party to come to mediation? People need to know that.
They do. Well, firstly, we would ask the person who approached us for the contact details of the other person. And
Right.
we would say to them, all our communication is transparent at this point, because we want to ensure that all parties know that the mediator in our organization is impartial. So we're not here to represent anyone. We do not represent either party. So when we do invite the requesting party to come to the other party to come to mediation, we would say to them, we were approached by Jean to say that there are some issues that he believes can be mediated on, and he would like to use our services, Paul, to mediate these issues. We would explain that we are impartial, that we do not represent anyone, and we would send all documentation, for instance, an agreement to mediate or a client intake form, to both of them at the same time and say, this is the first time we are sending these documents to both of you to have a look at. And again, reiterate in that agreement to mediate, we do not represent anyone, we are impartial, and there is no conflict of interest in being approached by Jean first. Then we would say we would give each person an opportunity to have the pre-mediation meeting with the mediator, so that they can understand who the mediator is and that impartiality of the mediator. Because I find that in practice, people think that the person who called you first is the one you are representing. So they really are they're nervous about it. Say, but Jean called you first, so you know the story. And it's no, we don't. We want to hear the story, and that's why we're inviting you to come to mediation so we can hear both sides of the story, or the story from both of you. So it's always that debate that we always get hit by, or get good questions, but so and so called you first, so you know everything and you believe them and you've seen the files, and we haven't. So we do spend an amount of time, not a lengthy amount of time, but we do speak in a manner that convinces them of our impartiality and lack of conflict of interest. And I think to the public who are using mediators, to actually probe and ask if there is conflict of interest from the mediator, just so that they can feel that they are comfortable with the choice of mediator.
Perfect. It's great. That's it. And sometimes happen to hear, because sometimes people say, "Are you a lawyer?" I say, "Yes, I am." But I'm not a lawyer here. It's not a courtroom. You looked for a mediator. You hired a mediator. So I'm not a lawyer right now. I'm a person who you believe in. And you said, I want you to be my mediator. So I'm not a lawyer. I'm not here to talk about law, things like this. I'm not here to defend you. No, I'm not impartial. Not. That's very interesting. Oh, there's a question here, a very interesting question, because very, very good. Do people need lawyers in mediation? Good question.
Good question. Thank you.
Professor Catalina.
Yes and no. Because when we start with mediation in South Africa, we do allow people the opportunity to come and approach mediators one-on-one directly. Then we have our court rules who say that it's mandatory to consider mediation before you go into a trial process, both the high courts and lower courts. And here, when the courts are involved, we know that lawyers are involved. Yet the court rules state you must consider mediation before proceeding. Now, here we have the problem with the lawyers, because they still want to be involved in the dispute, and they don't want to let go of the clients for fear that they're going to lose their client to mediation. So where we have clients that are represented, we do have these pre-mediation meetings with the lawyers and the clients, and we explain to them that in the mediation, it is the mediator is speaking to a client, not the lawyer. So the lawyer is an observer, and we explain the process of having the lawyer there. Yes, you can ask your lawyer for advice. The advice would come either in caucus sessions or outside of the mediation. It won't happen within the process. So you can use your time with your lawyer wisely, and the resources in terms of how much you're going to spend having your lawyer sitting there as an observer. So we inform them of what are the roles and responsibilities and the function of a lawyer in mediation, and we leave it to the client to decide. If a client comes to mediation where one client has a lawyer and the other doesn't, again, the mediator takes on the responsibility. One of the functions of mediator is to explain that it does not produce a power imbalance within the mediation should one party show up with the lawyer and the other, because the mediator is trained to manage that, to manage where a party comes in with the lawyer. And again, the lawyer is an observer. If another party comes without a lawyer, then the mediator knows is trained on how to work with the parties. And again, remind the lawyer, you're an observer. You will speak if requested to speak. You won't speak for your client. Your client does the speaking. Now, where parties have lawyers, we do explain to them, it's not necessary for you to bring your lawyers in because you still have attorney-client privilege. You may share, if you want to, questions that you need to get advice on. So you can still use your lawyer to get advice on. So again, a yes and no answer to that, because we work with lawyers. I don't want to say to lawyers, you are completely excluded from mediation. Most of our mediators who are training with me are lawyers. So I don't want them to think, look, I'm trying to stop you from being a part of a process that is part of our civil justice system anyway. And what I find are the best lawyers in mediations are the ones who went for mediation training, but chose not to become mediators because they realized they cannot be impartial. They cannot be neutral.
Yes.
However, they have decided, they've made a very responsible decision to understand the process so that when they're working with their client in mediation, they are able to guide them properly and say, listen, the mediator is doing this for a reason. The mediator is going through these stages for a reason. The mediator is sending us back to think about our negotiation strategy for a reason. So I find that lawyers who undergo mediation training, just to understand what happens inside the process, to be well informed and very good allies of mediation.
Perfect answer. Perfect. I agree with you. I do the same. And it's happened to me when a person comes with a lawyer saying, here's my lawyer. That's right. Is you right? And the other part has no lawyer. I ask them, listen to me. It's not fair if you went to the lawyer and the other part, and I ask my friend lawyer, I'm going to ask you. Remember, they are here to try to find a solution for themselves. You can be here as an observer, but I would rather you get out, be outside, because they need to talk to them. And I have never had any problem with my friends, my colleagues. That's okay, Carlos. I'll be here sideways. If you need any advice from your lawyer, talk to him, speak with him, and but try to not ask about law. I was in a mediation, and the person said, "But this is my right, consumer process. It's my right. I'm a client." Said, okay, but let me ask you: do you remember that once when you came here, I talked to you that we are not here to talk about law. We're not talking here about sentence, about a word or decision. And you said, I agree. Remember that? Yes, I remember. So I ask you help me to maintain this agreement with you and me, between you and me. Please do not talk about law. Do not talk about a word, what's going to be my right. Try first to find a solution. That's why you were here. I like a lot to empower people and say, people, when there's a word, my dear friend Felicia, when I say, you are not here to find a solution to your problem. And people look at me and say, why not? No, I'm not obliged to, but I am convinced that once you are here, and because you have intention to find a solution. Am I right? Because people feel comfortable when they do not have obligation to reach an agreement. So I reach for one say. So some friend of mine do not agree with me. Well, but this is what I say, and I feel comfortable. I am a mediator for more than I'm 65, for more than 40 years. And people like that, I need to tell them that they are responsible for the process. I'm not responsible for the solution. I'm there to guide them, to help them, to share, to interpret their emotion. not to find a solution. We are the same. And Katarina asking me about if one part has a lawyer and the other part do not have a lawyer, what do you do, Veerash?
I in those of course we'd have the opening session where everybody's there and everyone meets each other prior to the in the pre-mediation meeting. If the parties or one party has decided they're going to bring their lawyer and the other party knows that they're not going to have a lawyer present, I would ask them what their comfort level is of being in joint sessions with the lawyer present. And then it becomes technical. Then we start using all our tools, all our skills as mediators,
Yeah,
and we
perfect.
navigate this process watching the comfortable level of joint sessions and moving and strategically using caucus or individual sessions. So, because we want to ensure that regardless of them being in a joint session or in a caucus session, it's a safe environment. You cannot have one party sitting there feeling intimidated, and the process then becomes an abusive process because they are afraid to speak or they feel intimidated. And so we would, of course, as mediators, separate if we can see that it is not being constructive or producing collaboration within the process. And then test the waters, test in individual sessions to the person that's unrepresented. And I'm not saying we then start sympathizing with that person. We start empowering them. We start helping them understand what is it you did not follow on what was happening in the mediation. Is there Thank you. Is there any aspects you need to go back and research or gather more information on? So we keep empowering them to come back with information.
Great. Thank. Well, we stopped. We are in 43 minutes talking. Thank you very much. Well, I would spend all day long. We speaking about mediation because of my passion. I love mediation. Doc, my dear friend, Veerash. Here in Brazil, we should call you Vera. In Brazil, Vera, Veerash Srikison. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here with us. It was a pleasure and an honor. And I hope to see you again in other interviews, in other meeting. And this is your last words. Which message I'd like you to give to us, please?
Firstly, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak to your audience, to speak with you, to have these interesting questions from people who are watching and listening. Thank you very much to everyone. And I want to say that we work really hard in endorsing this collaborative approach because we know the human nature is to get along with people. We don't want to see people going on with life upset, sad, traumatized. We want to bring in some peace into their lives. We want to assist them to communicate. And in fair practice, we say communication builds collaboration builds communication. And so it's because we know that once you start communicating, once you start listening and feel heard, you're going to understand why you're in the situation. And something I started saying from the beginning is we want to help you move beyond that. And that's what mediation is about. So thank you again very much for this opportunity to express my views and my opinions very briefly. And I do hope we continue our conversations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Veerash Srikison. So thank you so much for your presence here, and I hope you see again. Thank you, people who are here, Dr. Catarina, Professor Maria Jose, and others that took part in our ADR today. Thank you so much, and see you next time. Bye bye. Okay, people, let's go and